We're glad to have you with us tonight. We're sure it's going to be enjoyable and entertaining. Some of us will enjoy it a lot more than some others. But for every sacrifice, there has to be a sacrificial lamb. And tonight it's our beloved Gippy, who I understand has embarked on a very dangerous endeavor. He has his motorcycle license, and you see this with training wheels on it. Hank told me just a second ago that when Gippy took over from him in the legislature, he said, "Gippy, make sure you take your training wheels." And evidently he took your advice, Hank, because he's done a wonderful job for us through the years that he's been there. And we hope he serves many, many more, or until I decide run for the office, and then I hope he gives it up. But I would like to thank everyone again, and especially VFW Post 4075, Carlos Pugh, the commander. Let's give Carlos and the crew the ladies VFW Auxiliary, Harold Cannon, and all of the crew that cooked this wonderful meal for us in the back. We always give a big hand to the cooks, because if it wasn't for them, most of us wouldn't be here. The people that purchased tables of 8 that made this event possible, the American Legion, Pat Badgett, and I understand, I just found out this afternoon that Pat was in a car wreck, and she is recovering. Jack is here, her husband. She has some broken ribs, but she is home recovering, so we're thankful for that. Beverly Healthcare, Elks Lodge number 530, Farmers Bank and Capital Trust Company, First Federal Savings and Loan, Frankfurt Fire and EMS, Frankfurt Regional Medical Center, Graham Camp Company, Gippy Graham? Campaign. Oh, a campaign. I never thought you'd campaign. Gippy Graham's Campaign Fund, Bill Hartung, Kentucky Employee Credit Union, Kentucky State University, and I see Dr. Reed with us, the Kiwanis Club, Frankfurt Kiwanis Club, Kroger, and I believe that's Kroger West, Charles T. Mitchell Company, Republic Bank, the Frankfurt Rotary Club, the State National Bank, and the VFW. It's always good to start off on a happy note, so Gippy will have a door prize. That's right. Jennifer Bardoff, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Oh. Hey. Let's see what you have in here. I do not know. We will check it out. State National Bank entitles this bear to one $50 United States savings bond. Compliments of State National Bank of Frankfurt. We want to thank State National Bank, and better check this, see if there's anything hidden in there. Nope, there you are, and thank you very much. So, Gippy, you made one person happy, and everyone else is now seething. Gippy told me when this group of people, he said, don't believe anything they say. There's not a truthful person in the bunch. I find that hard to believe, but I'm not going to question it, because you'd never question a man of Gippy's stature. Howard Lee Graham, Gippy's brother, cousin. Now we say a brother and a cousin. They're probably not even kin, just share the same last name. Howard Lee was born in Franklin County, fortunate enough to live here most of his life, and that brings up an interesting thing that I like to do sometimes. By a show of hands, how many people are native of Franklin County? Less than half. but a better showing than usual. He graduated from Thornhill Grade School, Elkhorn High School, and the University of Kentucky. Married to Elizabeth Ann Hippie, has 2 children, Tammy and Will, 2 grandchildren, Chad and Avery. 4th cousin once removed to Harry Gippy Graham. That must be an inside joke. Kentucky Air National Guard for 8 years, which included a tour of duty of the regular Army. Kentucky Revenue Cabinet. It was a department then, it's now the cabinet for 8 years, and has been loafing around Investors Heritage Life Insurance Company for 36 years. He's vice president of corporate services, and he has been Gippy Graham's campaign treasurer for 7.5 years. And people said Gippy's been running all of his life. This time, would you please welcome Howard Lee Graham. He's all yours.
This is all new to me, first time as a roaster, hopefully never a roastee. But I've had a few requests before I came up here, but I'm going to say something anyway. When I'm on page 3, Gippy, wait a minute. Okay. Gippy, I caught you on Channel 10 with Paula Rutledge and Pat Badgett promoting tonight's event. You said some complimentary things about me, and I thank you. But you also implied that some of the stories I told were not always truthful. Big guy, were you nervous about what might be said? We have not come to praise thee, Caesar. Marshall Ray is not here because it's Father's Day. I prepared my notes on a personal computer using the software Microsoft Words. Perhaps some of you have heard of it. The software has a spell check on it, and the first word to be highlighted was Gippy. And it told me that Gippy is not in the PC dictionary. However, the dictionary suggested some others, names. Gimpy, Guppy, Dippy, Lippy, Nippy, Yippy, and Zippy. And the spell check recommended Gimpy, I'm sorry. I even looked up in the unabridged edition of the Random House Dictionary of the English language that we have over at our office, and nowhere in 2,038 pages did I find the word Gippy. So good luck in the future. Gippy and I grew up in Thornhill. Gippy was born there, and I was, still got me? And I was transplanted there when I was 2. And the best I can make out is what Mr. Utterback said. We're 4th cousins once removed. And our lineage goes back to Francis Graham, who died in 1837 and buried on the Graham Cemetery on Indian Gap Road that connects Peaks Mill and Swallowfield. And Ray Graham is a historian in the family, and he can pick it up from there if he wants to. But I think he's been back to the Atlantic coast, and he found some stuff. Gippy's a little older than I am, but I remember him when we attended Thornhill Grade School. His hair was dark and tall, and he had a lot of more hair then, if I remember. Besides Gippy and myself, Thornhill is also famous for Fort Hill, which was rediscovered about 10 years ago. When Gippy and I were growing up in Fort Hill, that's where you went to throw hedge apples at each other. with, without adult supervision. Also little known, there's an old cemetery in Thornhill named of Bellevue, where a few of the early Kentucky governors were buried before they were reinterred in the Frankfort Cemetery, which was incorporated in 1844. Governor Madison and Governor Greenup were two of those. Thornhill School didn't have a gymnasium when Gippy and I grew up. And the first time Gippy knew much about basketball was when he was in the 6th grade, and the school janitor, Mr. Otis Snelling, cut down a cedar tree and used it to make our first goal. It was outside, of course, and we only played when the weather permitted or when it was nearly permitted we played. A little later, Mr. Snelling put up the second goal, and Gippy thought then we had 2 basketball courts. If I tell an untruth, I'm going to do this. Now, Thornhill was where Gippy started developing his skills that helped him become an outstanding basketball player. However, totally organized play probably didn't happen until he got into high school. When Gippy was in the 7th grade, Thornhill Baptist Church, where he was a member, or soon to be a member, entered a team in the Frankfort YMCA basketball league. Gippy's team was playing a team from the First Christian Church. At halftime, the teams changed goals, as they still do. The halftime tip-off was still used then, and Harold Wisman got the tip for Thornhill. He took off down the court to Thornhill's goal, and so did everybody else except Gippy. Gippy raced toward the goal that Thornhill used in the first half. He was under the basket, and he was waving his arms, and he was wide open, and he wanted the ball. Harold looked a little confused, but he threw Gippy the ball anyway, and Gippy scored for the other team. Thornhill won the game 21-7. Gippy won scoring honors for his team with 7 points. He was also tied for scoring honors for the opposing team with one of their players who had scored 2 points. When Gippy was elected representative for the 57th district, we asked him if he had an agenda. He said yes, he did. He said, you know, the old Thornhill School where I started was torn down. There's nothing but an empty lot. And that was after the new Thornhill School was completed. And the new Thornhill School is not used as an elementary school at the present time. Then he said, I attended Elkhorn High School, and it's been torn down. He said, I worked part-time at Old Granddad Distillery, and after I left there, they changed the name of it. After I graduated from college, I coached at Garth School in Scott County. It's gone. After that, I coached at Kentucky Southern College in Louisville, and the University of Kentucky had to take it over. He said, I worked many years in the education department, Kentucky Education Department, that it was totally abolished, and then immediately recreated in 1991. He said, and now I'm going to the Kentucky House of Representatives. Just give me time.
Thank you, Brother Cousin Howard. After hearing all of that, I fear for the Capitol building now. I had a little wrong information somewhere, Gippy. I was told that you stood on the ladder for Naismith and threw the ball back. That's not true? Jock did. Oh, I knew there was someone up here that did. I just didn't know who. Bob Barlow has been a a friend and acquaintance of Gippy's for lo these many years. And Bob was married to Joy Barlow for 51 years. 51 years. Let's give them a big hand. They have 2 children and 8 grandchildren. Bob is a deacon of the Georgetown Baptist Church, presently involved in home construction. He retired from teaching in 1982, 26 years of high school coaching with 528 wins. You really want me to mention the losses? I don't have to. 212 losses, which is a fabulous one-loss ratio. He was Coach of the Year of the state of Kentucky in 72, 73, 73, 74, 80, and 81. Did you top that, Gippy? Let's extend a warm welcome to Bob.
Thank you, sir. This is not my cup of tea either. I'm not much good at roasting, and we picked on a hard man to say something bad about. But I've got a few things. I'm going to say that I would name 3 things that I would be very critical of him. First place, he's a cheapskate. When I was coaching at Scott County and Gipp was at Georgetown, the Kearns Bridge used to take all the coaches at Scott County to the baseball game, Cincinnati Reds, and they would furnish the transportation and tickets and so forth, and then give you a little meal money. And so we had an extra ticket, and I met Gipp on the street, and I invited him to go to the game with us. And he said, well, he's very sorry. He had something, he was tied up that night, but he said, I can't go with you, but I'll take the money. The next thing that I would be criticizing over is he's a crybaby. When once again, when I was at Scott County and Gipp was at Georgetown, that was a bitter rivalry, and we lived right down the street from each other, and so many nights after the ball game, we'd get together, and he'd be crying on my shoulder, and I'd be crying, and I'd cry on his shoulder. So we were both crybabies. And then the next thing I would say about him is he's antisocial. When I was when I was at Bourbon County, and Gippy was still at Georgetown, and we used to get together in the middle of February, right before the district tournament, and the coaches would get together and just have a meal that night and just socialize and have an all-around good time. Because if what I miss about coaching to this day is the relationship that the coaches had with each other, and we really enjoyed each other. Are you with? Were you able to hear that last?
Rerun. Instant replay.
No, we were talking about Gipp being antisocial, and anyway, we would get together right before the district tournament, and have a potluck supper, and just have a good deal of fellowship. Really had a good time, and so we just mainly concentrate on the district coaches, and in that district we had Bourbon County, and which I coached there, and Jeep Clark was at Paris, and I forget who was at MMI, and we had Jock what's the name of that school? Harrison County, and there was I'm not real sure whether Cynthiana was still in operation or not. Had the consolidation already taken place when you were there, Jock? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, and then and Gip was at Georgetown, and so I called him, and we were the hosts for that meal, and I called him up to invite him to the potluck supper, and he said I can't come to that, and I said, well, why not? And he said, I've got to stay home and build up animosity. That's a true story now. I would now I've got a couple of good things to say about him. He's very athletic. Gibby. My wife is a terrific judge of athletic ability of other coaches, and she says that Gippy gets the prize for jumping the highest from a sitting position of any coach in the state of Kentucky. No contest. And then I appreciate Gippy for his business advice. We were back in those days. You know, they always talk about teachers get paid 9 months to get 3 months vacation, but that's 3 months without pay, and you're always out there scraping, trying to find something to do to get that extra. Well, in those days, now it's not true now, but in those days, a lot of the coaches went into the Mr. Softy business. and they would drive those trucks over several towns, and then that was supposed to give them an income for the summer. Well, at that time when I was at Bourbon County, Cotton Corral and I were looking for something desperately to do in the summer that really makes some money. And some people come by, and they're promoting a hamburger wagon, which also included ice cream. And they pretty well convinced me that we could really do great with that. And they had everything but our name on a dotted line. We already had somebody to help us take care of it while we were busy coaching. I mean, we'd already halfway hired somebody, and we'd already been to the banker to arrange for the money, because we certainly didn't have the cash. And so by the way, the banker advised against it, but we decided he really didn't know what he's talking about, because we had everything lined up. We were even going to get permission to come to MMI. We were going to pull up there, and all the kids were just going to buy tons of food from us. Well, anyway, I knew Gippy was driving a Mr. Softy truck, so I called him up to talk to him. Gippy had some very sincere advice. He says, "Don't do it." Don't do it. And that really, I would say that is the best advice, some of the best advice I've ever received, because we would have lost our shirt. There's just no question about it. Well, so much for that. Just I would like to say a couple of things that I consider this guy here one of the dearest friends I've got in this world. And he's the kind of guy that you'd like your son to grow up to be. That's the kind of person that I feel that he is. I think that the coaches in the state of Kentucky during the time that we were all coaching are very fortunate that Gippy was never in a position where he had the talent. I'm talking about basketball talent, players. Reminds me of my introduction of Fred Creasy as the Bourbon County coach. When I resigned, I got up and I said, well, I just can't say too much for Fred Creasy. So anyway, if he had ever been in a position where he had the basketball talent that the opposition had, there's no telling how many trophies he would have carried home, because he's some kind of terrific coach. And he's some kind of terrific father, because all you got to do is look at his children. Thank you.
Gippy, you better draw. You need someone on your side. You need help, buddy. Harold Cannon, the chief cook and bottle washer. I'm sure Harold's in the back supervising the kitchen. He has something from American Founders Bank, and it is a U.S. savings bond, $50. Mr. Harold Cannon. When I called Gippy and asked him if he would consider being our honoree tonight, he said, I want to talk about the years that people don't know. He said, everyone knows I'm a politician, not a good one, but a politician. But he said, I want people to know about my other life. 17 years as a coach, 1975. I guess was your last year coaching? And he said it played a key role in his life. And then we find out tonight he was a good humor man. So there's a lot of things we're going to find out tonight that we didn't know about Gippy. Our next roaster is someone that we have listened to on HAS. A lot of us have hissed and booed, and a lot of people have applauded. But he has been in our living rooms and in our homes, if not in our hearts, all of our hearts, for a lot of years. He coached against Gippy on several occasions, and we're very glad to have Jock Sutherland with us tonight to share his reflection on Gippy's life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jock.
Bobby was worrying about not having a tie, so I'm going to make him feel better. I like to never found this. I only have 2 ties, one of them 6 inches wide. So I'm one of those guys that has to find something to wear with the tie, not the tie with something. And by the way, I'm going to tell you all about Bobby. I coached 27 years, and I never competed against a better basketball coach in all those years than Bobby Barlow. He was absolutely one of the very, very best. Anybody beat me as much as he did, I had to be good. When I think of Gippy, I try not to, but when I do, I think about Georgetown. And he's in the right business because Georgetown had the district tournament, and that took some politicking to do that. I know what was behind that. Nobody ever played a district over there. But we played them at Georgetown. This is a true story. Game starts, I have a much better basketball team than he does. I have a lot better players. I had Phil Wagner and Ronnie Whitson, some really, really good players. And we were better than them. And Gippy had played the 2-3 zone forever. The game starts, they go down, they're in a 1-3-1. They steal the ball and come down and make a crib shot. And Gippy said, no, 2-3, 2-3. God, 2-3. I'm thinking, please, 2-3. They go back down, 1-3-1. We throw the ball across. They steal it, come down, shoot another crib shot. We're down 4-0. and the guy shoots a shot. He says, 2-3. 2-3. I'm over there saying, hey, son, 2-3. My God, 2-3. And we lost. I said, Gippy, when the game's over, I said, when did you start working on a 2-3? He said, tonight. Well, when did you learn to like it? He said, tonight. And when are you going to use it again? The next time we play you? First time I ever met Gippy was my first year as a basketball coach at Gallatin County High School. Now, Gallatin County High School is the smallest county in Kentucky and next to the smallest in size, smallest in population. And when I got out of the Army, I was trying to find a job, and the only recommendation I had was a guy named Billy Thompson from Georgetown that wrote a sports article. He said, a nice young man named Jock Sullivan just got discharged. He was an Eagle Scout, and he was looking for a job. That was the only thing he could say about me. And I went to Gallatin County to get the job. And I found this old guy down on his knees. I said, I'm looking for a superintendent, sir. He says, you got it. I said, well, I'm looking for a job. He says, you got it. I said, you don't know which one? He said, don't make no difference, man. We got 7. He says, I want to tell you right now, we don't have nothing. We got sorry teachers, sorry fans, sorry building, sorry equipment, no equipment. Pretty sorry. Well, as it turned out, I got my schedule. We opened up with Orangeville Village, Gent, Orangeville Village. I said, hell, I'll be 5-0 right there. I mean, I know. Well, we lost 10 straight. And Gippy's team came to town. Well, I had this big old boy named Danny Coomer that just got eligible. He joined the Marines when he was 14. I scared to death of him. First thing he told me, he says, Coach, I want to tell you, sir, I don't guard nobody. I like to shoot a lot. I said, that sounds good to me, man. Go to it. Well, this night he was eligible. And I'm going to stick his old Gippy. I didn't even know him. But he was sitting beside me, and I didn't start him, and we sat right under the basket, right then, about that much room. He kept saying, now. I said, no, not yet. You wait a minute. We got a rebound, took off. I said, now. He jumps in the pack. We go down the floor 6-on-5. He made the basket and got fouled and went over to report. I turned around, and here's Gippy. He runs the whole length of the floor. He's standing there, and the referee said, what are you doing here? And Gippy said, you saw that, didn't you? You saw what it was. Count them. There they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see it? He said, sir, that's an automatic technical foul on you. It's Valentine's Day, I remember. Gippy said, the rose are red and violets are blue. Refereeing something you can't do. And he said, well, now, rose are red, violets are blue. Happy Valentine, Coach Graham. You now have 2. And we lost by about 20. And I might add that after that game, my superintendent came in and knocked on the door. I was down there with my little office. He said, son, I said, yes, sir. He said, you really fit in here. Well, he was right. I didn't know nothing. Somebody told me about a zone defense. I know it's not about you, Gippy, but I'm having a good time. But somebody told me about a zone. I went up to Newport and bought a book on zone, 2-3 zone. And remember Deb Walden? Y'all probably don't remember Deb Walden. He was in the 8th region. He coached at Grant County, and he beat me to death all the time. And I read this zone. It said zone, you know, pass goes here, shift. Pass goes there, shift. Shift, shift, shift. I said, we can do that. I come back and I told my boys, I said, boys, it's all going to start right now. Everybody get in these positions. And when I say move, 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 move. Well, we went over to play a Grant County, and we were down 12-0. First 2 minutes of the game, they shot 6 grip shots. And I actually had one of my players say, coaches, we need to work on this a little bit more. Now, he said they're putting a man on the block, and the man in the top of the circle, I don't know which one to guard. And I say, hell, I don't either. Well, that was a bad team, but I will say this about them. My last year there, 4th year there, we won. We got to the state tournament. Got beat by North Marshall. I knew we'd kill them. I never heard of them. I didn't know. Had you all ever heard of them? They had Pat Dahl. I had a little boy named Rhodes Suter. We were scared to death. One of my proudest moments was checking in the Phoenix Hotel with my team. They were playing Star Spangled Banner, and little old Rhodes Suter said, Coach, my feet are killing me. I said, well, son, you got them on the wrong feet. He said, I said, you gotta have more poise than that. I mean, you can't come here like that. He says, Coach, your pants unzip. We got killed again. But it didn't matter. That was the one. And I just told Gippy over it. I was there in Warsaw, had nothing. We ran out of money about the 20th of the month. My salary of the first year was $3,016 for 10 months. And I had a wife, 2 babies, and a boat. I didn't think I needed anything else. And I was there 2 years before I got a motor. Now, all I hear about Gippy is what a gentleman he is. Well, that's true in some cases, but I've been with him some times when he wasn't that much of a gentleman. We were at a coaching clinic on the road, and we stayed in a motel together. We had gotten to know Gippy pretty well by then. And that first night, we were going to be there 2 nights. That first night, he snored worse than anybody ever heard in my life. I mean, I've never heard such a noise in my life. And I said, what can I do to this man to get him to shut up? I have got to sleep some tonight. So that first night we stayed, we had 2 double beds. He slid in his, I slid in mine. Well, on this night, he slid in his, and I slid right in behind him. I turned the light out, leaned over and kissed him on the ear. Hell, he never shut an eye. That next morning, he said, I'm a church man. And Jock said, I got to go by a drugstore. I got a little chaffing. I got to have some talcum powder. I said, okay. So we stopped on the way to church, and we walked in. He looked at it. He said, look behind that counter. Won't you look behind that counter? There was a beautiful little lady there. He said, look at that. I'm looking at it. She said, can I help you all? And she said, he said, I need some talcum powder. She said, walk this way. She came out behind that counter with high heels on, and he was watching her, you know. He said, if I could walk that way, I wouldn't need the talcum powder. I'd about had it with Gippy, but we had to go to church. So we went to church, sat down. Here come this woman down with a dress, kind of a topless thing, and it fell down. And the preacher said, anyone who casts his eye upon this woman in her moment of despair shall be blinded forever. And he said, hell, I'm going to risk one eye. I ain't going to tell no more lies. No, Gippy's a fine man. Everybody's known that for a long time. He and Bobby are absolutely 2 of the best guys that was ever in the business. Bobby, he's been a Christian. He's tried to reform me all his life. He's about to give up on it now, though. But they were really, really fine guys. And when my wife died, I was married 30 years, and when she died, and I got 1 million invitations to go to supper, and I only went one time, and that was to Bobby and Joy's house. And the only thing I hold against him, he beat my butt all the time. And I did get one against him that was pretty important. And Bobby had the best team that never won the state tournament, without a question of a doubt. And it's hard, it's just tough luck, but he had a great team. Gippy, I wish you lots of luck in whatever you choose to do. I thank you for the steak. I appreciate the invitation, and I hope you all had a good time. Thank you very much.
Okay, Gip, reach into the vault. Charles T. Mitchell Company. And to accept the award for Charles T. Mitchell Company, Bernie Smith, are you there? Oh, Bill Johnson. You won Sparky. You won Sparky. Firehouse Dog. Thank you. That was from the Frankfurt Fire and EMS. We want to thank you for that. I have a few people I want to introduce, elected officials and some other people. Mayor Bill May. Glad to have you with us, Bill. County Judge Teresa Barton, I believe. Teresa. We have Commonwealth Attorney Larry Cleveland. Larry, glad to have you with us. City Commissioner Tracy Thurman. And City Commissioner Lynn Byers. And President of Kentucky State University, Dr. George Reed. Dr. Reed, we're glad to have you with us. Our next roaster was a student of Gippy's who has many, many stories about the times that they rode back from losing basketball game. When I talked with Wayne on the phone, he didn't mention riding back from any winning game. But he is currently Director of Pupil Personnel for Anderson County School System in Lawrenceburg. He was a former teacher and basketball coach for 17 years in the middle school and has a total of 31 years in public education. Wayne King.
Boy, Jock's a hard act to follow. He's pretty good at this roasting thing, and I'm not. Of course, he's had about 19 years of experience roasting UK on radio. So he has a little advantage on me. It's an honor to be with you tonight on this festive occasion, and I'm glad to be a part of roasting such a deserving individual. Gippy and I go way back. Maybe not as far back as some of these gentlemen, but we go back far enough that he remembers when I had hair, and I remember when he, well, actually, I don't ever remember him having any hair. But as you've heard, he has a secret past as a basketball coach, and there's a reason he's tried to keep that secret over the years, and I'm going to expose some of those things tonight. I've made some notes because, and I may be a little bit long-winded, because you got to realize I'm representing a lot of players tonight. A lot of players would have liked to have been here in this place tonight to take some cracks at him. One of the, we mentioned that I'm going to give you a different perspective. They've talked about what it's like to coach against him, be his friend, and all these other things, but I'm going to give you a perspective as a player and what it was like to play for him and what he was like as a younger man when he was coaching. First of all, this guy had a real ego problem. This soft-spoken, mild-mannered gentleman that you thought you know had an ego problem. Now, it wasn't as bad as Rick Pitino's, but it was sizable. And my first encounter with that ego was my first day on campus. I was new to the campus, had just transferred there from a junior college. It was summer school. I drove on campus, and I really didn't know where I was at or where to go, so I pulled in the first parking lot that I saw. It was pretty much empty. And in fact, there was nobody parked at all in the front row, so I went right to the front row, and there was some parking spots with some names on them, but I didn't pay any attention to them because I figured those people were gone for the summer. So I pulled into one of them, went to class, came back a couple hours later. There was a note attached to my windshield. I don't know if you remember this or not. Do you? Yeah. He didn't know it was me, and I really didn't know it was him. I've long since lost that note, but I've always remembered the content of it and how it was written. So for this special occasion, I've rewritten it to the best of my memory. It went something like this. To the owner of this car, as a high school student, I worked very hard to prepare myself for college. In college, I continued to work hard, spending many late night hours studying in preparation for my chosen career. Upon graduation from college, I entered the teaching profession and started working on my graduate degree. As you can see, I have spent many long hours and many long years to get to where I am today, a college professor. You too, through hard work and perseverance, may one day be a success in your chosen field. You may even reach that pinnacle of success where you finally get your own parking space with your name on it. Until that day comes, stay out of mine. Signed, G. Graham. And I thought, oh boy, I'm already in trouble with the coach. Thank goodness he didn't know what car I drove. I had the pleasure of playing for, I'm not sure that's the right word. I played for Gippy for 3 years. And to say that he was intense as a basketball coach would be a real understatement. He was Bobby Knight without profanity and chair throwing. Off the floor, he was a pretty nice guy. In fact, he was like a father figure, a big brother, a friend. But something happened when he put on that coaching outfit and he walked onto the basketball floor. There was a mysterious transformation that took place, something like Jekyll and Hyde. Totally different individual. His practices were tough. They were real tough. And he liked to squeeze everything he could out of every minute of a 2-hour practice. And every day he would write on a blackboard what we were going to do. And he'd wheel that big blackboard out onto the floor. You remember that, don't you? You did do that. And everything was listed. And he had everything timed. 5 minutes of this, 15 minutes of that, 12 minutes of this, 3 minutes of this. And down at the bottom of that blackboard every day was the dreaded word, conditioning. Now, we players thought that might be more appropriately called torture. And that was the only thing on that blackboard every day that didn't have a time limit. And we figured that was just because that was his most enjoyable part of practice, and he didn't want to limit himself by putting a time and then having to stop when he was having a good time. He had several means of torturing us players after practice. Again, we would go hard for 2 hours, and then one of his favorite means of torture is what he called Lakers. And you basketball coaches out here, you probably have an idea of what that is. That's where you would run from the in line to the free throw line and back, half court and back, the other free throw line and back, and then the other in line and back. And Gippy would divide us into 3 groups, guards, forwards, and centers. And he'd get his stopwatch out and his whistle and get over on the side, and we'd have to run them in a certain time, like the guards would have to run in 25 seconds. And if you didn't make it, if one player didn't make it in the group, he'd make the whole group run again. He liked that. He liked teamwork. Another favorite means of torture after practice or toward the end of practice was figure eights. Now, generally, if you're a basketball coach, you think of figure eights as just a passing drill that up and down the floor. But he would make us go 10 times full speed. He'd put us in groups of 3, and we'd go 10 times full speed the length of the floor. And we had to hit 10 consecutive layups. And if one man missed a layup or made a bad pass, we had to finish out the drill. Then we had to run it all over again the next time and stay there until we got it done right. He was a stickler for perfection. One of the last ones that I remember that he was real fond of was 3-on-3 full court at the end of practice. And I believe he got this from his good friend Bob Davis at Georgetown College, the basketball coach there. He would divide us into teams of 3, and we would play full court, maybe 5 baskets. And the winner got to go in, got to go home. The loser had to stay and play the next team. Well, if you lost the first game, your chances of winning the second game were pretty slim. And if you lost the second game, your chances of winning the third game were real slim. And if you lost that third game, your chances of winning the fourth game were about as good as winning the lottery. And if you were the last group out there of 3 that was remaining, he had a little surprise for you, which really wasn't no surprise. It was Lakers. So he'd run us some more. This man loved to run people. He volunteered to coach the cross-country team, the college team, for 2 years for free. And one of those years, he made me run. Isn't that right? That's right. He was the basketball coach, and I was on scholarship, and I didn't have any choice. It was the most miserable 2 months of my life. I lost 20 pounds before the basketball season rolled around. He loved to run people so much that he used to run himself. He used to run in marathons all the time. You still running those?
I got a new heel.
Yeah, I got some replacement parts there. I know all about those replacement parts. To say that Gippy was competitive would be an understatement too. He hated to lose, as one of the coaches here referred to earlier. And I remember we were playing in a tournament, or we played in a tournament up in, I believe it was Earlham College, maybe the Quaker City tournament or something like that. It was up in northern Indiana. And he felt like we had a real good chance to win this tournament, but we didn't win it. Anyway, we would drive to our games, and he would drive a car, and several other adult members of the staff would drive. And you really didn't want to be in the coach's car because, you know, he was pretty focused on the game, especially on game day. And it wasn't too bad going to the game. And it wasn't bad at all when we won, coming home in his car. But what the players were afraid of was being assigned to his car on a game when we would lose. Because after a loss, if you were in his car, you were supposed to dress in black and be in mourning all the way home. There was no talking. Anyway, back to this tournament, we lost this tournament that he thought we had a good chance to win. And I was in that car. And I remember all the way home, I don't believe there was a single word said. He had both hands on that steering wheel. He had a scowl on his face. He was gritting his teeth, and he just drove like this all the way home. Not a word. Maybe 150 miles. I don't know how far it is. It seemed like 500. Anyway, the next day in practice, he rolled out that big chalkboard. Everything was written on there, and he didn't speak to us. He just pointed to the first drill. So we ran it. He pointed to the second drill. We ran that, the third drill, and so forth. He didn't speak to us that day. Next day, same thing. Next day, same thing. And his practices were normally hard, but these practices were unusually hard. And I can remember the players saying, man, we got to win. We can't take this much longer. And that motivation worked because we won our next game. I could go on with a lot of stories about Gippy, but my time's just about up. I do want to add a P.S. like some of the others have done. First of all, let me say everything I've said tonight is true. I might have exaggerated just a little bit, though, but it's all truth. But personally, it was 3 of the most wonderful years of my life playing for Gippy. I'd do it all over again. Even with all the running, I'd do it all over again, Coach. And you tried to make us better basketball players, but more importantly, you cared about us and you tried to make us better human beings. And you had a special magic, a magical way about making every player on the team feel like the most important player on the team. And very few coaches have ever been able to do that. So I know that I speak for all of our coaches, all of our players that played for you at Kentucky Southern when I say I want to thank you for everything you did for us and for being the best man we could have possibly had for a coach. I'll add another P.S. Next to my father, this is my favorite man.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We've sure found out a lot of things about you, Gip. And you still need help. Gene Cole. C-O-L-E, Gene Cole. All the way in the back. Would you pass this back? It is a very nice clock. It's an anniversary clock from Selbert's Jewelry. Make sure it gets all the way to the back. Let's do another one, Gip. From the Frankfurt Fire and EMS, we have a stethoscope and a blood pressure cup. And it goes to Gene Chesser. Our next roaster is not a stranger to any one of us here. He had the honor last year of sitting in the Gippy Graham chair this year. Hank Hancock was a state representative, our state representative. Yes. Hank was our state representative for 21 years. He's a Franklin County native, and he is now executive director for the Kentucky Association of Plumbing and Heating Contractors, and he's a former owner and manager, or part owner and manager of Whitehead Hancock Plumbing and Heating. Hank Hancock.
I think this thing's kind of dangerous. Huh? I tell you what, this has been a very educational evening. I didn't know what to expect with some of the other roasters up here when I saw the list, and not really knowing them that much. And in the past, I've known most of the people that sat at the table. But I've realized tonight what I've been missing in my life and what I haven't known about Gippy. No wonder he quit coaching. As someone said earlier, they looked up the word Gippy, hardly, I think. 36 years loafing? Is that what he said? Hope you don't have any insurance policies over there.
I think they were canceled.
Said, what does a roast mean? Says, well, that's where you say things that would embarrass whoever the honoree is. My wife told me, said, you can't say anything bad about Gippy. Said, my goodness gracious, said, you can't. Said, nobody can find anything bad about Gippy. And I said, well, I can. Said, how can you do that? Said, well, said, I found out from Dave Taylor that anybody grows up in Thornhill has something they don't want the public to know about. And having visited Thornhill many times in my youth, I swear to you, that's the truth. That Fort Hill that we talked about throwing things on, and Overton Bryant and Chico and those things, trouble I used to get into out there, thank you, Lord, you've been good to me. I was a kid about 7 or 8 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old, I think. My family lived out in Fairview Heights. We lived right across, catty-cornered across the street from Bo and Clara Perkins, parents of 2 people sitting at this table here. And I remember Clara was Gippy's sister. And I remember this word, Gippy, 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 Gippy. The first basketball game I ever saw, my father and Bo, and I think, Billy, you were there, took us up to watch Gippy play basketball. That's the first organized basketball game I believe I ever saw. You got to remember, this was pre-television. This was when the family sat on the porch and talked to each other, and you socialized. You even knew who your next door neighbor was. Heaven forbid. But you knew who they were, and you played games, and the biggest entertainment we as kids had was riding a stick horse. And we had a wonderful stick horse. Billy and myself run up and down and said, Gippy-I, Gippy-I-oh. And I never did know the difference. It took me years to find out the difference between Gippy and Gippy. And I was hoping someone earlier was going to say something about where the name Gippy came from, because I think we all are entitled to have a little bit of that. I tried to do some research, and I don't know whether you know this or not, but Gippy's quite a singer himself, and there's a couple of reasons that I can't really go and roast him like I should, because first place, he only give you 5 minutes, and according to my calculation, we should have been finished 25 minutes ago. But Jock took most all of it, and he can have mine too if he wants to come up here, because that was entertaining. That was great. All of it's been great. But there's one thing I've got to straighten out right now. All these basketball coaches are just alike. They tried to influence the young people as I was 100 pounds ago, and try to put all this nonsense propaganda in your mind about saying fit and trim, I'm telling you, it didn't take with me. I had a, by the way, there's Frank McClovick over there. I got to tell a story real quick. Frank McClovick took my girls and got them into running, and they went clear through college on a track scholarship because of that. It wasn't Frank that taught them how to run, it was me. But I always say Frank, I love him for what he did for my daughters and getting through college and all that track team. Frank, you always did a great job. And by the way, Kimberly just came in third in a marathon up in Charleston, Indiana, about 600 women, so she's still doing great. I got a letter here that I want to share with you. It's always a pleasure to tell stories about Gippy. We all grew up together and got our education in Thornhill. Gippy couldn't wait to begin his. Wilma Montgomery, Gippy's sister, tells the story of how Gippy began his formal education. Before there were daycares and kindergarten, there was Aunt Mary. Every day while other children were in school and both parents were at work, Aunt Mary was there taking care of the Gippy. You couldn't do that today for state law. Legislators do good things. They pass these state laws because don't allow to keep kids like that. Aunt Mary, and this is written, I didn't write this. Aunt Mary was an old maid, and she was delighted to watch 4-year-old Gippy, the youngest member of the family. Gippy's father often walked home to check on his son and eat lunch with him. One day he came home to find Aunt Mary crying and sobbing, and little Gippy was nowhere to be found. They called for the boy and no answer. They asked the neighbors, and no one had seen him. It seemed like hours, but finally down the road came the sister Wilma and Gippy hand in hand. In Gippy's other hand was the pad and pencil he had taken to school. He knew his Aunt Martha was a teacher at Thornhill School, so he had taken his school supplies, walked through the fields and up the hill where he'd rapped on the school's wooden door until Martha came to let him in. She sat him at a desk with 5th graders until Wilma was given permission to leave her class and take him home. So when Gippy tells you that he started school at an early age of 4, he's almost telling the truth. And there's a closing sentence on this, which just exemplifies, I guess, well, as you can tell, no one ever spanked Gippy. Is that the truth? You know, a little side, Wayne was talking about Gippy and the way he'd get Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I didn't really know that Charlie Furr could speak English until 6 years after I graduated from high school. They asked about what language are you taking in high school, and I said, I think it's Spanish. We take it during halftime of the ball games. But Gippy is talking about the really turns into that Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. I think that's fantastic to know that that he can do that, because I first really got to know Gippy at the YMCA. Really got to know him from the point of knowing who he was while he was working over in the Department of Education. Yes, I was a member of the Frankfurt Y. Worked out down there. Did the same work. They did. See how much better my hair is than his? So something has to work. Right here against this wall, Wendell Ford one time said, if he goes down to the Frankfurt Y, that's not where I'm going. But I met Gippy down there, and we became good friends, and we talked about the problems of the world. We solved the problems of the world. Gippy, I don't know whether you remember this or not, but many years before it even was mentionable in Kentucky, I came to Gippy with a plan for a year-round school in Kentucky. And boy, was that an unpopular issue with most of the legislators at that time. But Gippy thought I was on the right track, and he gave me encouragement, and we went with that thing, and I introduced legislation for year-round school to make it possible for kids to go year-round. My buddy Adrian Arnold, I think, said last year, he always introduced a bill that kids could not go to school until after Labor Day, and here his seatmate Hank was introducing one saying you could go to school anytime you wanted to. So it came up, but Gippy and myself became good friends down there. Through that association, one day Gippy decided that he was going to run for superintendent of public instruction. And I was glad that somebody earlier said that he ran for that, and goodness gracious, he lost, and they abolished the job right after he lost. That was great. But we had some times with Gippy, and I was very proud to be on his team when he did that, and was very hopeful that he could go. They did Brock won that year. But there was a fellow in the legislature running named Roger Noe. Roger Noe was amongst the Young Turks. Neighbors Joe Barrows and Jack Coleman were amongst those Young Turks. But Gippy came to me after that election over there, and he says, Hank, I need something to do. I really want to get involved. And I said, what do you want to do, Gippy? He said, well, I'd like to do something in the legislature. I said, well, the session will be coming up pretty soon. I'm sure we can get you a job up there. He said, Hank, I really want to get involved. You know how he does it. Hank, I really want to get involved. You know. You ever go see him patting his legs, start singing, da-da-da-da-da. I hope he does that before the night's over. Hits that leg and starts singing to himself. By the way, that's a $47,000 knee I'm hitting on. I better quit that. But anyway, he said I want to get involved. I said, okay. He said, I know what we got coming up. He said, the Central Kentucky Caucus is looking for someone to serve as administrator for our Central Kentucky Caucus to do that. And I said, of course, it doesn't pay anything. He said, what's it pay? Nothing. He said, I'll take it. I said, well, I've got to go in. Eck Rose was the president of the Senate then. And we had this Central Kentucky Caucus and brought Gippy in, and Gippy agreed to be the sort of the manager for that Central Kentucky Caucus. Well, all session long, he just ran back and forth between the Senate, between the two parties, trying to get us pleased and everything. I thought, surely to goodness, if there was ever a chance in the world that he'd never come back for public office. So you can imagine the surprise on my face when several years later he decided he was going to run for the legislature. And he did. But he did an awful good job then, but he did get more than he bargained for. He got more than he could handle at times because they worked him to death. But he didn't mind it. He learned from that experience, and he went on, and he got very excited about what went on in the legislative process, and he got sincerely involved. Now, there's a few things that I'm still a little bit irked over. Gippy came in, he kept, because I brought him on, we were down in the basement, and the cubicles that we were in were from here to the other side of that cake over there. And that was a little cubicle with cloth lining and a cloth desk and a few little pigeonhole file cabinets up there. And that was my office. That was my office. I mean, as small as I am, it was a little difficult for me to turn around in there. But then I had to bring Gippy into my office to be part of mine because I'm the one that brought him on. So he was right there shadowing me all the time that this was going on. Of course, you couldn't really pass air in there without somebody knowing it. That's how small it was. But it just was one of those situations awful. Well, less than a year after I left the legislature, I went back to see Gippy. My place was so bad, you couldn't have possibly have slept if you wanted to. There was no way to take a nap. I go back to see Nick Gippy. I have to go through 3 people to get to him. Yes, ma'am, I'm here to see where Gippy. You are? Yeah. Well, let me call on the phone. Calls another person says, well, I don't know. We'll have to see, check with so-and-so. I think those people are in here tonight, right? Some of them, a couple of them. Well, yes, Mr. Graham's in. But who'd you say you were? Oh, this is Hank. Hancock. Oh, well, let him come on back. And I went back there, opened this door, and walked into Gippy's office, and I'm telling you what. I mean, my bedroom's not that big. Mahogany desk, a nice couch to lay down on, picture of the Thornhill Mafia over the couch. I mean, you talk about a layout. This was a year after I left serving the public for 21 years, and he was already plushing it. Gippy, a couple of years later, I went up to the black, talked to a couple of legislators, and there were still a few around there that I knew then. And I said, Hank, you did us a terrible injustice. I said, what do you mean I did you a terrible injustice? I said, what? You just really did. You shouldn't have left here. And I said, why is that? I said, well, when you left, you were here. You know, anybody could get mad at you. In fact, at one time or the other, we all got mad at you. But now you left Gippy up here, and nobody can get mad at Gippy. I said, thanks, that's a good introduction. Gippy has been, when back, I don't want to say one more thing about our little holes in the wall we had back there. And several people in this room I see remember these little holes in the walls we had. They used to close the session up, and 5 or 6 days later, they'd find several homeless people sleeping back there. We thought they were lobbyists or something, but they were still in there. That's how small these little places were. But Gippy is well respected up there. He has a reputation of not getting mad enough sometimes. And I think that's wonderful. You learned here tonight that he can get mad if he wants to. He can get upset. He can get hard. He does have a Dr. Jekyll Hyde with him. And I found out that when he needs to use it, he does win it. But if there's one thing that Gippy reminds you of, that reminds me of, he is caring, he is concerned, and most of all, he is conscientious. I'm glad that he's my friend, and I'm glad that he represents us in the House in Frankfort for this district. Gippy, good luck to you. Thanks you for everything. Hank?
Thank you, Hank. Gippy, would you reach in? And give me another one, please. Thank you very much. Bob Lancaster. Well, Bob, you are the proud owner of a pen from Judd's Office Supply. There you are. Thank you very much, and thank Judd's. And Julian Anderson. Is that you? That. In case Gippy ever gets an opportunity to make you run, here's a petameter. And that is from Frankfort Regional Medical Center, and we'd like to thank the Medical Center for that. Our last roaster is someone that has known Gippy all his life. Not all of Gippy's life, but all of Ray's life. He's Gippy's eldest son. He has his age here, but I'm not going to tell that part. He's married to the former Patsy Manning of Frankfort. They have 2 children. David Nicholas, 25. Marcy Marie is 22, and they have a daughter-in-law, Mandy Silvers of Maysville. He's a counselor at Harrison County High School in Cynthiana, head football coach at Harrison County High School, a graduate of Danville and Morehead State University. Let's welcome Marshall Ray Graham.
Let me just thank everyone for coming tonight and supporting this event. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I'm certainly proud of my father and glad to participate in this program. I represent my brother Randy and my sister Lynn, you know, and any of these memories that I have from growing up in the household of Gippy, and we certainly had a lot of fun. I could certainly say, Bobby, I'm certain one reason why he told you didn't want to get in that business, a lot of it had to do with Randy and I sneaking in the Mr. Softy truck and eating the cookies. Those big, giant chocolate cookies, you know, that they put in the ice cream sandwich, and I think Randy and I'd slip out in the truck every once in a while, probably with Rob. Probably your son Rob, he probably got in that Mr. Softy truck too, I don't know. All up and down the street. That's a pretty popular guy when the Mr. Softy truck went down, but we were eating up all his chance to get any profit, I'm afraid. Well, a lot of people like to laugh. I mean, I don't know what to roast Dad about, really. I do know that he sometimes would fall asleep. I know that, you know, he fell asleep driving the car when we were in Middletown and ended up hitting one of those barrels off of the Interstate 64. Fortunately, he made it okay through that event, and that next day, the freshman team at Kentucky Southern beat the University of Louisville's freshman team at Freedom Hall. I remember that real well. And then when we moved to Danville, I can remember Dad was working in Frankfort at the time, and he would drive back and forth from Frankfort to Danville, and they had those long trains in Harrodsburg. And I heard the story about somebody having to go to the car to check on Dad because he'd fallen asleep as the train was going by. And then one day I was home, and I came up the driveway, and I saw the car there, and I saw the brake lights on. And I walked up, I looked in, there was Dad asleep on the wheel with his foot on the brake. And I was afraid to almost wake him up, and I knocked on the door, and he was holding on the wheel. He didn't know where he was, you know. Thought he was getting ready to hit one of those barrels again, I think. I don't know. But one of the best stories I've got about that, I'm not really a funny person, and I never have been, and probably there's a good reason for that. I got into the practical joke business, I don't know, probably when I was about 8 or 9. Randy was probably about 5 or 6, and we thought it'd be funny. I think it was just me or you and I came up with the idea to put switches in my sister's stockings at Christmas time. Did you and I do that, conspire on that, Randy? I did. It's me, all me. Well, anyway, when we woke up that next morning and my little sister, who was about 3 or 4 years old, started crying about those switches being in her stockings, you can tell he drove the foolishness far from me, as the good word says. Any chance for me being a practical jokester stopped real quick. Dad was one of those guys that make you cut your switches off, and then, you know, when you got your spank, you had to go out and cut it. Boys, that was horrible. And I remember only lied to me one time in his whole life. Only one lie. The man, the most honest man I've ever heard of and known about, and everyone testifies to his truthfulness. But there was one time he lied to me, and it was after a swimming lesson at Georgetown, and I was starving. I've always loved to eat, and it was around lunchtime, and we were coming across the Georgetown College there where the dorms are and the pool used to be, and I just had my swimming lesson, and Dad knew everybody. Everybody was saying, "Hey, Gippy, hi, Gippy," oh, you know, and I was really ready to go home and eat lunch, and I was hungry, and we had this old Chevrolet. It had a metal rim horn. I don't know what year it was, but I was sitting, Dad said, "Hey, Gippy," and Dad got up, and I said, "Oh, no, he's going to be there forever. You know, he's going to be talking to this guy." So I started entertaining myself at the wheel, and I would, you know, act like I was driving, and then I got a little, I wonder if Dad, you know, I honked the horn, and Dad opened the door and said, "Son, you don't want to honk that horn anymore. I don't want to hear that horn honk." Well, there was a little bit of play in that Chevrolet horn. You could press it about this much, and it wouldn't honk. But just a fraction of an inch a little further, and it would honk. And I knew I had to be careful, so I was just pressing on to see how far it would go. And finally, it went a little toot. So Dad said, "Son, I warned you." I said, "Now, if you do that again," I'm busy talking to this gentleman, and we'll go home in a minute. He said, "If you do that again, you're going to get spanked when you get home." Well, however old I was, I just couldn't resist. I just kept pressing on it. And I just knew I could do it without making it toot, you know. Finally, just a little tiny little toot. Well, he had to keep his word. He's a man of his word, you know. So on the way home, he said, "Now, son, warned you about that. When you get home, you're going to have to cut your switch and get your spanking." And I didn't really want a spanking. I said, "Well, that's not fair." I started getting into the argumentative mode. And I said, "Well, if you do that, then you ought to let me run away." He said, "That's fine. You can run away." So I went out and cut my switch, and he, you know, hit me like he did a few times. Not too bad. Stung me real good on the legs and rear end. And so I got on my bike, and I went down Old Lemons Mill Road. I was on my way to Uncle Ray's in Toots. I was going to come to Thornhill and Mimi. I was going to come live with them. And all of a sudden, Dad came running out of the house. He said, Marshal Ray. I said, "What?" He said, "Come back here." He said, "You can't run away." I said, "You said I could." He said, but your mama said you can't." So, that was the only time he ever told me a lie. Dad was really big in my eyes. You know, he would walk down Old Lemons Mill Road with me when we'd go to school, and I'd turn right and go to Garth, and he'd turn left and go up the hill to Georgetown High School. And one day, it was in December, I think, a little bit before Christmas, and I couldn't wait for snow, loved to sleigh ride, and Uncle Ray had bought me a sled, and I just couldn't wait. And he said, "You know, there's going to be some snow forecasted for today." I said, "Is that right?" I said, "How much?" He said, "About an inch." And Dad was going like this. And, of course, I'm down here looking up at Dad, and Dad's going like this. About an inch. Of course, I'm down here. I'm thinking he means over my head. So I go to school, and I'm telling, "Hey, we're going to have a big snow. We can go sleigh ride and everything." He said, "Are you sure?" I remember Mark Lucas and whoever those guys were in my class. They said, "I didn't know there was going to be that much snow." I said, "Yeah, Dad told me. He said it's going to snow an inch." And I started going like this. They said, "An inch isn't that much." I said, "Oh, yes, it is. My dad told me it was." They pulled out a ruler and everything. Said, "Here's an inch." No, Dad said it was this much. I was sure that an inch was that tall, you know. So I wasn't going to believe it till he told me. When I got home, he had to tell me what an inch really was, and then once he told me, then I thought it was okay. Well, anyway, I don't know how to roast a guy that deserves a toast, and he's really special. I've seen him do those jumps that Joy talks about, and I've seen him break chairs and tear up telephone books, and he's always been like Superman to me. And that's just the way he is. And I think I'm real lucky. I told Patsy I wouldn't run. But to the guy that deserves the toast, I finished the roast, and that's about all I can do.
And now we find out he can jump tall buildings. Amazing, amazing. Gippy, when the letter was sent to you, there was a line missing on the bottom, and what it actually said is you had time for rebuttal if time permitted. And we're running a little long, so no, we can't do him that way, can we? See what a nice guy was. He said, yeah, okay, that's the way it is, you know. But now, having your friends and family, your cousin, brother, tell us the things about you that we hold so dear. It is now your turn to tell us exactly why they're wrong.
Okay.
So, go at it.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much. This has really been a great occasion for me. And before I get in my response, I want to mention that I had a call night before last from Lapsley Cardwell. And Lapsley wanted to be here. People here in Frankfort know Lapsley Cardwell. Jock, you remember him. He's a revered coach from Bridgeport High School for years. And Bobby, I went up to visit him, and he said to be sure to tell you two guys that he wanted to be here, could not be here because of ill health. And Bobby also mentioned that the two of you took a physical education class one time at Georgetown College when you were coaching the Great Crossing Apes, and he was coaching the Bridgeport Greenies, and that you tried to influence the teacher for a good grade, and he said, but you got a B minus and he got a B. And he said, for me to tell you that he remembers that. Then also, we were talking about basketball tonight, and I really wanted to have this type of occasion here because if you listen to what's going on in education in today's world, they talk about teachers, and they say they're doing coaching. You hear coaching all the time now. They're coaching. But at the time when Jock and Bobby and when I was back into coaching, if you said coach, it was not respected as it is today's. They thought if you were a coach, you were a jock. You know. And they didn't understand that quality coaches were excellent teachers. But now I think people do understand that. But there's three other coaches, older people in Franklin County, that I want to acknowledge tonight because I see we're being videotaped, and I hope that they will view this. And one is, we had my high school coach, who was sort of a volunteer coach. He wasn't a teacher back during the war years, Earl Howard. He didn't get much pay, but he coached us in high school. And Earl is home, and I hope that he will watch this. And he led us to the county championship one year, which was a big thing in Franklin County back when I was in high school. And then Charles Terry. Charles Terry's retired from the school system, and he coached for a while at Peaks Mill, and then he was also an administrator here in the county. And then beloved Mr. F.D. Wilkinson, who was in Frankfort High. He was the administrator, principal, superintendent, but my senior year in high school, he coached the Frankfort High School team. The last high school game I played was against Frankfort High, and they beat us in the district tournament. Mr. Wilkinson was an excellent coach and a real leader. So I just wanted to acknowledge those four people that would mean so much to the young people here in Frankfort. Now, when I was there in high school in Frankfort, we had 7 high schools. We had 4 county high schools: Bridgeport, Bald Knob, Peaks Mill, Elkhorn. You had Mayo Underwood, and you had Good Shepherd and Frankfort High. We were small schools, but we had people who knew each other, and we compete with each other, but we also had respect for each other. Now, with that said, I want to make a few comments and a few retorts to the people who have roasted me this evening. To my brother cousin, Howard Lee Graham. Now, Howard Lee said Thornhill, in addition to being well known for the two of us, he mentioned some other factors. Well, actually, I live down in Thornhill proper. Around Swigert and Knoll and Pig Alley and Daly Avenue. Now, and Howard Lee lived on Thornhill Heights. Now, you can tell by the distinction that there is a difference in what you specialize in. The kids that live down in Thornhill proper, we specialize in boxing, in wrestling, marbles, climbing trees, and flirting with girls. The people who lived on Thornhill Heights were more astute and more, I guess, intellectual. They majored in the arts and arithmetic. Howard's daddy, who also was named Howard, and he's a fine man, and a sweet, lovely mother, May Graham. Many people remember May Graham. We worked so long in the county clerk's office. Wonderful family. He had an older sister named Edna May. When WFKY first started here in Frankfort, it was located across up on East Main, right at the end of Capitol Avenue Bridge. Howard's daddy sponsored a little talent show on Saturday night. And, of course, Edna May could sing. I can remember this one song that she would sing was Paper Moon, only a muslin, something about a moon hanging over a muslin tree, and make believe if you believe in me. But anyway, Edna May had a reputation. She's a pretty good singer. She was in our class with Joyce back here. Well, Howard wanted to be an entertainer also. They wanted what he could do. He said, I can yodel. So they tried him on yodeling and he didn't do any good on yodeling. So he wanted to play the guitar. He took a few lessons playing the guitar. They were going to try him out, see if he could pass muster. And so after a few lessons, he was playing along there. One day they said, show us how you can play, Howard. And he started playing. Then he stopped. And they said, well, Howard, when you going to get started? He said, I just finished. And they said, oh, I thought you were tuning it. Now, Howard, mentioned a while ago that he'd gone to the University of Kentucky. They mentioned 30-some years he'd been working for Investors Heritage. Now, we all know about Investors Heritage, located down on the corner of Capitol Avenue and 2nd Street, well-respected insurance establishment. It's the largest, I believe, the largest domestic insurance company in the state. Is that not true? And they said his title was vice president. And he said that he looks after the accounts, money. He knows how to handle money. Howard Lee does. When I was thinking about running for representative, I went to Howard and said, Howard, would you be our treasurer? And he said, I'm too busy. I can't do it. He said, I got all these things I'm going to do. And I said, Howard Lee, I'm not going to run if you don't do it. And so anyway, I wanted a good, solid person. Now, he deals with millions of dollars. And he looks good when he dresses up. And I've gone to his office. Now, Hank was talking about the office that we inherited. Hank voted to have the office I got. I just walked into it. And I've gone to see you a few times, haven't I? And he's got a nice one. It's hard to get to him. I mean, you come in, like you said, and you go to the desk and you ask, and they call it Mr. Graham, said, you got that desk down here. Well, then he's got to come to the top of the step and look at you, and he said, come on up. So I've gone to his place, and so he looks good. And I'm impressed that he knows his business. But when we started our campaign, now, some of you may know this, and some of you may not. We try, some people try to collect all the money they can to run a campaign. We do not. Our campaign does not do that. We have a different philosophy. We say we try to collect as little as we can to be competitive. That's the way we approach things. So we don't go out and try to get a lot of money. And we try to keep, but you understand, if you don't have much money, you got to be careful with it. You got to know how much you got all the time. You can't have a mistake. Now, if you're dealing with millions, you can make a mistake. And you can absorb that. But when you don't have much money, you know how that is. You take nothing, something from nothing, well, you're in trouble. Well, anyway, so we had, some of you know this. About 2 weeks ago, we had our picnic. We have a picnic every summer. We invite the world. It's not a fundraiser. We just invite the world. And we ask people to bring a dish, covered dish. And our campaign funds will buy the chicken. And someone will help provide the soft drinks, and someone will do something else. And different people here would provide plates and things of this nature. Barbara and Scotty and them do different things for us. And so anyway, we had our little planning meeting back before our picnic. And Hardy came to give us the treasurer's report. And we said, Hardy, how much money do we have in treasurer? He said, we have $2,600. Well, that's pretty good, we thought. So we told David, go buy 150 pieces of chicken. And so we did. All right, so we were having our picnic. And right toward the end of the picnic, you know, Hardy talks sort of soft. He walked to me and said, hey, Gippy, said, I told you that we had $2,600 in treasure. I said, yeah, he did. Gippy, we only got $1,200. So.
We did have $2,600
One time, yeah, about 2 years ago, we had $2,600. But so now, you know, we're down at about $1,200. But it's okay. But that's why I tell you. See, he measured in arithmetic. He forgot how to subtract. And now, my dear friend Bobby Barlow, as Bobby said, we are dear friends. Joy, I love her. We lived on the same street. Those first years I was coaching Georgetown High School, or Garth, and he was at Scott County, and I never did beat Bobby. I want to tell you, Jock and Bobby, two of the most outstanding high school coaches in the state of Kentucky, bar none. Jock is in the Hall of Fame. Bobby, if he's not, will be or should be. They've both been Coach of the Year. You mentioned Bobby's won almost 600 games. Jock, I don't know how many he won, but you know, Bobby coached at Scott County, and first Bobby started at Great Crossing. Now, Great Crossing is a little burg between here and Georgetown. And Great Crossing, you have mascots. Great Crossing has the best mascot I have ever heard of. The mascot for Great Crossing was the Great Crossing Apes. Nowhere in the world, I bet you, there's another team that was known by as the Apes. But Bob was there, then in Scott County, tremendous success. Bourbon County took Bourbon County to the state tournament. Coached an all-state player, Jim Lemaster. Then he got out and went to MMI, won 3 or 4 games, did the best coaching job he ever done with the different material they had, then went to Bryan Station. More big, great teams. 2 more all-state players. All-American player, Jack Gibbons. Good. Jock, over at Harrison County, had at least 3 all-staters. Whitson, Wagner, and Works. And then over at Lafayette. So they're outstanding coaches. But they won lots of games. But I want you to know one thing. And even Wayne just coached a few years. He took a team to the state tournament. And I want to tell you, they couldn't have got that reputation if it hadn't been for coaches like me. Well, Bobby mentioned, you know, that we would get together at nighttime. Now, he and I shared teaching a young boys, 15, 16-year-old boys high school Sunday school class. went to same church, and we shared this class together. And Bobby is well recognized as just, just a quality person. And, but he also could get angry. And he has a son who's the name of Rob. Rob and Ray are about 2 or 3 days apart in age. And so Bobby he was particularly upset about something one time, a game, and Rob was over at our place playing. And Ray and Rob were having a little conversation there. And then they went to church, they went to Sunday school, church and everything. And Ray said to Rob, "Rob, is there really a devil?" And Rob said, "No, Ray, it's just like Santa Claus, it's your daddy." But Bobby was one of the most unselfish people in the world. Jock and I were talking a few minutes ago. He was an innovator if people who know basketball, if you watch TV and you hear like Temple University, the coach there, they talk about he plays this matchup zone defense or talk about matchup zone defense. Bobby Barlow preceded all of those college coaches on the matchup zone defense. He was an innovator, and he's never really got the credit that he was really due for that. But Bobby was also very giving. I'd go talk to him and say, "Bobby, how's this work?" And he'd tell me how his matchups on, and I'd go and play him, and he'd just tell me how I never could beat him. but Bobby is a wonderful person, and I love him, and I appreciate the fact that he came here tonight and helped to roast me. Then I want to talk about Jock. Now, Jock said he's talking about the first time we met each other. I reminded him here that when I was a freshman at Cumberland College, it was a junior college, Jock was a freshman at Campbellsville College, which is a junior college. And I have a picture in the old annual, the first time we played against each other, and Jock was playing guard, and believe it or not, I had to jump center at that time. But anyway, that's when I first saw Jock. Then we go our ways, and then I go to the military service and get out and started coaching at Georgetown. And then my first year as head coach at Georgetown was in 57, 58. Then in 58, 59, Jock was talking about this Gallatin County team. He had 30-some wins and 1 loss, and took them to the state tournament. And he thought he really had a good team until they ran into North Marshall. And I've heard Jock over the years talk about, well, we got up there and ran into North Marshall and said, they came out there with those shirt tails out and said the boys thought they didn't have pants on, and said, there's this guy named Pat Doyle. And he said, came out there and just dominated the tournament that night. So, Jock, I wanted, for your sake, Pat Doyle he's one of my constituents. And I asked Pat, particularly, to be here because I want you to look at Pat. Pat became Mr. Basketball in 59, and I want you just to see him. Pat, where are you? Stand up here. Where's Pat? Pat's around right there. Right there's Pat. So, Jock, I only won maybe a couple of times against Jock. He had what he's called the Mad Dog defense. He was an innovator. And he'd give the names. Jock knows how to get attention. And so he'd give up names, and he'd get those guys up there on what he called the Mad Dog defense. And he was written up pretty good. He was tough. Well, but he was also very determined. When he fixed on something, he was going to do it. I mean, he's going to carry it out. And I remember the one time, one of the maybe 2 times, we might have been successful with Jock. But we were playing over at Harrison County, and he had this outstanding team. And he went to this stall, and where he hit the ball to his 2 guards and put 3 guys over the corner. And I'd seen him use it against Scott County. I thought, well, I know he's going to be ahead of us. Everybody was ahead of us. And so I thought, well, he's going to be ahead of us. Now, if he goes in that stall, how can we do something about that? So I had a few quick kids. I was on my team, fortunately. that particular year. So we just had to take 2 guys, go over there and guard their 3, just to make sure they don't get open, go to the basket. And we put that like a triangle out there. And whenever there's 2 guards around the ball, we would double team where the ball went, and we started stealing the ball. It was amazing. And we caught them, and we got ahead of them. And they continued to do that. And so we won the game. And I was going down to the bench to shake hands with Jock, and Jock's not there. And I asked the coach, the assistant coach, big fellow there, I don't know who it was. He said, "Yeah, I'm sorry." I said, "Jock." He said, "He left, last minute to play." So I said, "Well, he's back in the dressing room." I went back in the dressing room. And he said, "No, he got his hat and coat and went up and said he closed that door over there and broke that window out." And he didn't go to the radio show. Well, that night, I was about midnight that night, I got a phone call. And this was a repentant Jock. "Hey, Gipper," said, "I want to apologize to you, man." But that was one of the only times. But Jock also, I remember when Ray was playing for Danville High School, Jock was coaching at Lafayette. And that particular year, he was not having one of his better teams. And so Danville was beating them, and just while the game was going on, I was down at the end of the gym watching Ray and them play. Jock got up from the bench and walked down to the end and started carrying on the conversation with me. And I said, "Jock, would you go back on to the coach?" He said, "They're not listening to me anyway." Well, and then, of course, I was there the night he won the state championship. It was 78, 79, when he won the state championship. And I remember in that final game, he had a big lead at halftime, and I thought he was going to win the game. And I wanted to congratulate him, so I went down on the floor at halftime at the Rupp Arena. And so when he came out of the dressing room, I greeted him, and I remember that night, and I know how happy he was, and I was happy for him. So, Jock, I want to thank you for being here tonight and helping to take part in this.
Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you.
Wish you hadn't said all that stuff.
Now, Wayne King. Wayne, representing some of the players I coached. I've been very fortunate in my coaching, not only at Kentucky Southern, but at Georgetown and at Boyle County. And I've had quality people. And I'm not going to go through a litany of who all they were, but Wayne was one of those outstanding people. He is probably the most competitive player that I ever coached. He grew up in Louisville and played for Pleasure Ridge Park, and he was really Wayne was just a competitor. His first year he went to Lee's Junior College, and I got him to come to Kentucky Southern. He wanted to come to Louisville and play for me. And so it's true, I was a very competitive coach, and I did have strict discipline. And I know when we were on this one particular drill one night, and Wayne, we're trying to, what you would call a muscle-in shot. Take the ball, go to a baseline, go up, hold it tight, go up and anticipate being fouled, and put the ball in the basket. And as they would come in, I'd be there under the basket, and I'd whop them if they come in there. And Wayne was the first year there, and he wanted to make an impression because he wanted to become a regular starter on the team. And every time I'd whop him, and he would miss the basket. And we was going through those drills several times, and I could see he's getting more angry and more angry as each time he come in there. And so one time I saw him coming, well, I knew here was coming the bull. He's going to try to run over the coach. So here he came in. He didn't even worry about putting the ball in the base. He just went right at me. Well, I was anticipating. I dropped back. I gave him a good bullfighter move. And he went back to the end of the line, and then he told me this. I had a couple of the players that had been with me for a while. They said, Wayne told me, he said, Coach, when I got back, said, Gary Winscott and Tim Jackson, they got to me and said, look, next time you go for the coach, we're going to get you. I don't want to talk too long, but I would need to tell one about Wayne. He told me about the parking space, and that was true. That's almost like the word that I wrote on his plate. Rightfully so. I mean, my goodness, if you work that long to get a parking space, I mean, why you want some rookie student to come in there and take it? but I remember I've probably disciplined Wayne more severely and on him more than any player I ever coached, and he stayed close to me. I mean, that's interesting how that happens. And over the years, he stayed close with me. But I recall we were playing Berea College on their opening tournament, and we were trying to get our college started off with the right attitudes and things. And Wayne was, like I said, very combative, and the game was going on, and he had some type of encounter with one of their players, and they're shuffling at each other, and so I took him out of the game, and we were sitting on the front row of the bench there, the bleachers there at Berea College, and when Wayne came out, he kicked that bleacher. He went wham all over the rim. Well, I got up. I got Wayne to come down here with me. Pushed him down there, and then I tried to do it in a nice way, real quiet, and I'd shoot him out pretty good. And I told him we ain't going to do those kind of things. And so then we went in halftime. He tells this story. He's told it to me several times. He said, Coach, you know, you went in halftime, said all you talked about was me. And what I was doing, how I was representing our school. And so I chewed him out at halftime. Then we went home. We stopped at the Frisch's restaurant over on Versailles Road, it's now closed, over in Lexington, and went in there. And then I go to his table and I chewed him out some more. Well, first of all, when he went to the dressing room, I went to the shower. Yeah, after the game was over, he went to the shower, and I went in the shower after him. And he tells a story about how he was in the shower, and I'm in there with my shirt on, just chewing him out. And so then, because he's not representing our school right. And so then we went at the restaurant, I got him. Then I told him, be in my office. I asked him what his schedule was the next day. I wanted to be in the office. So he came in thinking I was going to kick him off the team, and I complimented him. I complimented him for his effort. I complimented him for his combativeness, and just told him we'd have to channel that. But that's one thing I'll always remember about Wayne. Very, very competitive, and he went on. He wanted to coach. He coached in high school, and he went to coach in college, and he wanted to come back to Kentucky. Now, this is how grateful he is for all the things I did for him. He called me from South Carolina. He was assistant coach at Charleston Southern, which is now a real good team down in NCAA tournaments now. And he'd been a recruiter for them. He said, "Oh, Coach, I want to get back into Kentucky." And he had an appointment set up for Shelby County and Clark County. They were open at that time, and Anderson County was open. Well, I said, Wayne, I told him about Anderson being open. He'd had appointments with it too. I said, why don't you go with Anderson County? And I made a call for him and everything. So he went over there, and they gave him the job on the spot. Well, then he plays me. I'm coaching now at Boyle County. 2 years we played. He whipped me both times. Gratitude. But anyway, he was a great coach. He took a team to the state tournament, quality person, and I thank you, Wayne, for being a part of this. Hank Hancock, golly, representative for life. Hank Hancock. I mean, when I made only one promise after I was elected. I was speaking to the Rotary Club, and they said, you be making your promises? I said, I only make one promise. What's that? I said, I won't try to serve as long as Hank. But Hank, you mentioned about knowing my nephew, Billy, and Barbara, and his dad, and my brother-in-law and sister were all real good friends. Now, he mentioned I'm older than Hank, and when I was in the service in college, was when Hank came through. Hank, you graduated, I believe, in 58?
That's good.
54.
That's okay.
54. Yeah, 54. I was in the service in 54. But I was trying to follow all the teams around in the area, and I'd get the State Journal, and I'd read about Hank Hancock. And he mentioned Charlie Ferg was his coach, a great person, a great coach. Charlie taught fundamentals. And about fundamentals, dear people, if you do not know him, it's how you handle the ball, how to play defense, how you rebound, how you block out. And Charlie was a real good coach on those fundamentals, particularly on blocking out and rebounding. And he had good teams when he had good players, and he had competitive teams at all times. Well, I was reading about Hank, and I knew he was playing and doing very well. What I didn't know was, which I've learned later, which is factual, Hank was the pivot man his senior year. And Chuck Cotton, some of you know Chuck Cotton, was a year behind Hank. Now, on Hank's team, he mentioned Overton Bryant. He was a Thornhill boy. And then we had Chuck Cotton, and Gilmore Dutton was around there somewhere in a squad or something. But anyway, Hank, like most players, likes to shoot. Now, you saw how much confidence and poise Hank had when he came up here. I mean, he stood back here and with that powerful voice, just like he did when he was on the House floor. I've heard tales about what kind of speeches he'd make on the House floor. Well, Hank was never lacking for confidence. Well, that year, he played. Is this not true, Hank? Didn't you have your shoulder thrown out or something? And you wore some kind of a brace support? That is true. It went out shooting. He was always shooting. And so they tried, and Charlie Furr was trying to control that. And also Charlie was trying to get Chuck ready to play pivot after Hank graduated. So in this one game, I'm told that Hank he had Chuck in the game and Hank in the game at the same time. Hank got the ball. Hank wants to shoot, like most guys want to shoot. And so and he was very confident. He had this idea about sometime he'd jump and shoot and holler 2, knowing it was going to go in. On this one particular night, he jumped to shoot. Chuck, who had been coached to block out and go to the basket, look at the basket. And Hank jumped, hollered 2, shot, and the ball hit Chuck in the back of the head. So, but Hank is, we respect Hank. He's helped me. He's given me insight to things, and he was very kind to me after I was elected, and spent time to me and answered a lot of my questions. And I appreciate you, Hank, for being here tonight. And then my son, Marshall Ray. I have known him all his life. That is true. And I'm so proud to have him here. And in a few minutes before we leave, I'm going to have Randy and Ray, my sister, and everybody stand up, here that's so dear to me, and grandson. But Marshall Ray, he said it's tough for him to roast me. It's tough for me to roast him because he's a great son. As Randy was a great son and Lynn was a great daughter. I'm just so proud of them. I realize that the most important blessing that anybody can have is to have children, then to raise them into adulthood, and they're your friends. What a blessing. And then they like each other. So therefore, you see, I sort of float around on earth right now. That's where my emphasis is, and I float. Everything else is just something around. Yes, but Ray, but also being a parent, and those of you who are parents, you'll know this. Sometimes your children think you don't know what to do. But you do know what they're doing, but you just don't always jump in there. You got to let them learn a few lessons. Well, you saw that Ray is a good-sized fellow. I don't know, he's 6'3", whatever he is now, 230, 40, something, working on that. But as high school senior, as a high school senior, he was a pretty good sized fellow. He was about 6'3", 200 pounds. He was all-state tight end for Danville High School, played linebacker and all that. Well, I think it was during the summer practice before school started. And I'm not for sure just the exact thing, but I think that's when it was. Harrington Lake is close to Danville. And so this particular time, Ray and 2 of his friends were out swimming in Harrington Lake. They're football players. They think they're tough. And so they saw these good-looking young women out on a raft. So they swam out to where these women were on the raft and started flirting with them. They didn't know they were married. Well, their husbands saw this. And they jumped in the water wherever they were and started swimming over there. Well, these guys saw them husbands coming, so they started going to land. And Ray had an old Malibu, and they jumped in the car and headed to Danville. And these husbands came out of the water, jumped in their car, and took off after them. And so we lived on Lexington Avenue there, and so Ray got home. They got some more of the football players, and they all got in our front yard. They ready to fight those guys. But he needed help. Well, then I'm going to tell one more story on him, then I'm going to quit that. But tonight, I was talking to him when he came in. He said, Daddy, I saw Bobby McGinnis a while ago outside at a stoplight, right? And when that made me think of a story that happened with Randy. and Bobby McGinnis and my son Randy. See, Randy's 3 years younger, and I used to call Randy Me Too. Because whatever Ray would do, Randy would say, Me Too. And so anyway, Ray was a freshman at Moorhead, and his real good friend that he saw out here a while ago, Bobby McGinnis, was a freshman at Eastern. And so they were home from school, and they were wanting to get some kind of pennants or things to put up in their room. So Jerry's Restaurant, as you used to go in 127 in Denver, to Jerry's Restaurant on the right, as you go into Nevada, it had some pennants out there. And it also, at the same time, Marathon Oil was having a 50-year anniversary, and they had some big flags around. And so they thought, well, hey, we ought to get some of these pennants and some of these flags and put them in our room. So they went over to Jerry's Restaurant, tore down some pennants, wrapped them up. Randy saw all this. I mean, young, impressionable, looking at his to his big brother and his friend Bobby McGinnis for leadership. And they put these things in his car. They went over to Marathon Oil, and the flags were a little high, and they were trying to get some of these down. Finally, Bobby jumped up and got one and pulled it down, and at that time they saw a police car, Denver police coming up. And so they jumped in the car and rolled the thing up, and Randy's trying to close the door, and Bobby's leg was in there, and Randy clammed the door, and Ray took off, and they got away. Now, I'll tell you the moral of that story. You heard a while ago that Ray is a counselor at Harrison County High School. Well, let me tell you about Bobby McGinnis. Bobby McGinnis is now the district judge in Harrison County. So people can change. But it's really been a pleasure to have my son here and to have him to share some things with me. Now, before I go any further, I would like for you all, see, many people don't know who my family really is, but I'd like for my other son, Randy, to stand. Please stand up, Randy, and just stay up there. And we have his girlfriend and her son, Steve, and Elisa. Stand up there, please. And then I have Ray's wife, Patsy. Please stand up here. She's from here in Franklin County. She's a precious. She's the media person for Harrison County school system. Then my grandson, David Nick, and his wife, Mandy. I have two sisters. I had three sisters, one deceased, my brother deceased, but two sisters, Aline King and Wilma Montgomery. Will y'all please stand, or whatever, if you can. Okay, stand up there, too. I have several nieces and nephews and cousins, and my dear partner here, sweetheart, Karen. So would y'all all stand up? My nieces and nephews and cousins. Thank you very much. We're a tight-knit family, and I appreciate them all. I've got my friends from the campaign people here, and I appreciate them. The people in Franklin County have been very good to me, and I'm very grateful. Now, tonight, we've raised some money for the Red Cross, and I appreciate everyone contributing to that, and I appreciate being a chance to be roasted. I also, in my closing comments, I just thought about this a while ago. I had some people here call me Coach Graham. That is a great title. I still treasure that when I have players say, "Hi, Coach." That means a lot to me. I've had people speak to me as representative. Now, that is a tremendous honor to be representative, and I treasure that, and I'm very sensitive about how I try to conduct things. And so I've been called that, and that's an honor, and I'm grateful for that. I've been called Dad. And my goodness, what a thrill that is, to be called Dad. And then, for the majority of people have called me friend. And I appreciate that very much, and I'll try to return that to you, and I thank you for coming.